اللهم لك الحمد في السراء والضراء، ولك الحمد في النعماء والأواء، ولك الحمد في الشدة والرجاء، ولك الحمد على حلمك بعد علمك، ولك الحمد على عفوك بعد قدرتك، ولك الحمد على كل حال. الحمد لله في الأولى والآخرة، الحمد لله الذي لا ينسى من ذكره، والحمد لله الذي لا يخيب من دعاه ولا يقطع رجاء من رجاه. الحمد لله عدد ما خلق، الحمد لله ملء ما خلق، الحمد لله عدد ما في السماوات وما في الأرض. والحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونتوب إليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء، واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، فإن خير الحديث كتاب الله، وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. Allah Ta'ala has created us singles, groups, to live in a society. And that society, it has multiple ethnic backgrounds and people living the way we are right now. And that can go either way. That can lead to a lot of frictions. People have different nationalities, different madhahib, and different backgrounds. Or it can lead to actually integrating ideas together and living while loving each other. Allah Ta'ala did not leave that without regulation. He ordered us ta'atul imam. And that's going to be the subject for today, inshallah ta'ala. We'll start with the subject al-Islam. The word Islam from taslim, surrender. So he's asking you and me to surrender to Allah. But how do we surrender? What are the rules that regulate that issue? The surrendering means طاعة, obedience. فقال علي بن أبي طالب رضي الله عنه: الإسلام هو التسليم، والتسليم هو التصديق، والتصديق هو اليقين، واليقين هو الأداء، والأداء هو العمل. فطاعة is two-folded. One, to أحكام شرعية, what we do in siyam, salah, how we follow these things. But also what they call ulama masalih wa mafasid, that things that regulate our daily life. For that purpose, Allah Ta'ala said, يا أيها الذين آمنوا أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم. أطيعوا الله, those who believe, obey Allah and obey al-Rasul. وأولي الأمر منكم, and those who are in leadership positions in your society. Ulama struggled how to define أولي الأمر منكم. There is no problem, no issue about أطيعوا الله in the Quran, أطيعوا الرسول in the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But what do you mean now by أطيعوا أولي الأمر منكم? And I'm not going to get to that debate because it's not the subject for today. We can pick it up some other time, inshallah. But basically, you will see some scholars who basically at time working for the rulers. They will tell you have to obey him regardless. You obey the imam. Whether he does good or bad or whatever it is, when they recite some ahadith, I'm not going to get to it because it's really not the subject for today. And some of them said, no, this is restricted. If they ask you for something bad, you don't do. But only if they obey Allah and the Rasul, then they earned your ta'ah. But before that, it doesn't work. I want to get to the nitty-gritty at the end about this society where we live. What is إطاعة الله والرسول وأولي الأمر منكم in this small society? Because it's pertinent to us. But I think it will help if we get some historical background. Allah Ta'ala says clearly, أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم. فإن تنازعتم في شيء فردوه إلى الله والرسول إن كنتم تؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر ذلك خير وأحسن تأويلا. In the hadith, Ubadah ibn Samit says, قال بايعنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم على السمع والطاعة في منشطنا ومكرهنا وعسرنا ويسرنا وأثرة علينا وألا ننازع الأمر أهله. قال إلا أن تروا كفرا بواحا عندكم فيه من الله برهان. رواه البخاري. So عليه الصلاة والسلام, Ubadah ibn Samit narrated from the Prophet Muhammad saying, we bay'ana Rasulullah, we gave him al-bay'ah, that he is our leader, على السمع والطاعة, that we listen and we obey in everything, in all of our aspects in life, everything. وأن لا ننازع الأمر أهله, and we don't fight those who are leaders, unless you see kufran buwaha, unless there is clear-cut kufr of Allah Ta'ala. And you have to have a proof. There's a burhan, a proof. وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من رأى من أميره شيئا يكرهه فليصبر فإنه ليس أحد يفارق الجماعة شبرا فيموت إلا مات ميتة جاهلية. Whoever sees from his leader something he doesn't like, he has to be patient, because the alternative is leaving the group, and that is dying as in Jahiliyyah. And finally, the last hadith, عليه الصلاة والسلام says, السمع والطاعة على المرء المسلم فيما أحب وكره ما لم يؤمر بمعصية فإذا أمر بمعصية فلا سمع ولا طاعة. That we have to listen and obey with everything, whether we like it or we do not like it, as long as we're not being asked to do something haram. And that's Bukhari. So the three hadith, sahih inshaAllah ta'ala. Why did Islam emphasize that point? As-sam' wa ta'a. Well, let's take some historical background. Think about it. In Jaziratul Arab, the Arab Peninsula, before Islam, They were on the outskirts of Jazirat al-Arab, some kingdom where they had kings like al-Ghasasina wal-Manadira, Manadira in Iraq, Ghasasina in Syria. They had kings and they had leaders, appointed kingdom. But in Jazirat al-Arab itself, there were no such thing. It was tribunal society. Let's take Mecca for instance. The biggest tribe was Quraysh. There is no really clear-cut proof who was the leader. They never sat down and they said, you are our tribe. The leader, the master, was one of the best people there, but they never went in a formal way of appointing him. So it says was first Qusay ibn Kilab, the great-grandfather of Prophet ﷺ, was the first one of the Quraysh. Then they say that Abd al-Muttalib, his grandfather, was. And if you remember the incident of Abraha, the king of Ethiopia now, called Habash at that time, who wanted to invade Mecca so he can destroy Al-Kaaba. And Allah Ta'ala أرسل عليهم طيرا أبابيل. But if you study the incident itself, there was no such society and they could not even stand to Abraha. But they had no police force, they had no trained army. They will get training or get together to fight, but there was no such thing. And you remember his famous saying, he says, they stole 200 of his camels. And he jumped and he went to meet Abraham, requesting his camels. People said, choose me. You worry about your camels, you don't worry about Al-Kaaba, your what being built. He said, camels and their Rabb. But Al-Kaaba has its own Rabb, and he will protect it. But the point I'm trying to make, there was no such clear-cut leadership position. Let's take Al-Madinah. Al-Madinah, they had two tribes, and the Jews and the Bedouins. The two Arabic tribes, Al-Aws wal-Khazraj, they had one of each, but also it wasn't very well appointed. And if you remember, when they were about to appoint someone, Abdullah ibn Ubay ibn Salul, and then the Prophet ﷺ came and he became one of the head of the munafiqeen, hypocrites at that time, because he felt his kingdomship was threatened. But my point is, Arabs at that time did not know well leadership and sama' and ta'a. They will meet in certain house around Al-Kaaba if there is something important, and they will make decisions, and it's basically most of the time it's based on a single vote and there is no clear-cut leadership. But why is that? Why is that? Interesting. Muhammad Salim al-Awwa wrote, he said, فقد كانت المدينة تفتقد الوحدة الإدارية في شؤونها كافة، فلم توجد فيها أي سلطة إدارية تدل على وجود نظام سياسي من أي نوع يلتزم بها أهلها وينزلون على حقه. So Al-Madinah lacked the classification of civil government. It did not have that. The interesting, they say Ibn Khaldun, the famous North African social scientist, he said, yes, that is absolutely true, but it came from a fact that Arabs at that time have what he called it in Arabic wahshiyah, sauvage, or whatever you want to call it, that they lacked the essence of obedience. That's what happened to the Arabs. So And he goes on in explaining Ibn Khaldun how did that happen with this society. So it was essential that Islam comes with new regulations and a new guidance to us how we have to basically stay away from this wahshiyah and this no central loyalty, to change that ila أطيعوا الله والرسول وأولي الأمر منكم. And that was the important thing. قولوا قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه يا فوز المستغفرين. الحمد لله رب العالمين الذي علا فقهر وملك فقدر وعفى فغفر وعلم وستر وهزم ونصر وخلق ونشر لا إله إلا هو سبحانه لا يقال لغيره سبحان وهو عظيم البرهان شديد السلطان لا يعجزه إنس ولا جان. So even at that time, let's say that there was Qusay ibn Kilab or Abdul Muttalib, and no one knows exactly who took over after Abdul Muttalib. Remember, Abdul Muttalib died when the Prophet ﷺ was very young, 6-7 years old. Abu Talib, his son, took over, the Prophet uncle. And people think that Abu Talib was the next leader, but there is no really well documentation of that. After he died also, people don't know who exactly took over, but they think it is Al-Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib, based on the fact that when ﷺ went to Al-Madinah, he spoke and he said, no, we have him here, so please support him, please help him, as if he were speaking on behalf of his family as the leader of Quraysh. Okay, so what about this small society here for us? Do we have a leader? Do we have, or are we supposed to listen to our leader? And who is that leader? Who is that leader? So think about the following. This masjid, this community, elect government, right? We have the board of trustees and we have the executive committee. Does that qualify them to be our leaders? Do we have to listen to them on everything? I posed that question to Dr. Khalid in Quincy, and I said, help me understand the role of the executive committee and what do we have to listen to them or not? And the answer was interesting. Basically, I'm going to read some of it. الطاعة مفهوم عام ناتج عن تأثير اجتماعي أو أخلاقي أو ديني، وفيه يخضع المطيع لتعليمات أو قوانين أحكام أو أوامر، وليس بالضرورة أن يكون المطيع مقتنعا بما يخضع له، فقد تكون الطاعة مع الرضا وقد تكون مع القهر. So he said obedience has to happen, and sometimes you like the leader decisions, and sometimes you don't like his decision. You still have to follow it. We know that, as long as ما في معصية. We already established that. But the question is, does this executive committee qualify as leader? Now, let me pose a question for you. When you went to elect this, number one, the board of trustees is, that body is a consultant to the executive committee. So clearly they have no leadership as Amir. What we're talking here about is the president position and the others. So the president of the masjid, does he have the right to say, I think it's better if you sit there because I feel there is some harm coming from there, therefore I want you to sit there. I want to regulate this door to be closed because there's security reason and I'd like to do that. Does he have that right or not? So let's establish. Number one, we did not elect leaders of the community, right? We did not elect someone who is our leader in the community. We elected leader of the masjid. So that's the elected position, is leader of the masjid. There is a lot about that in the Sharia al-Islami. They call him الناظر على الوقف. He is the guardian of the endowment. So the president is the guardian of the endowment. He was not elected as the leader of the community, but as the guardian of the endowment, ناظر الوقف. And by the way, there is huge literature in Islam about ناظر الوقف, because it's very important. And unfortunately, I don't think anyone from any executive committee in the country knows the ahkam fiqhiyya pertinent to that, and what they can do and what they cannot do. But for ناظر الوقف, for this community, he has the freedom and the ability to والصلاحيات to ask us within this masjid to do things, and we have to follow it. Not as the Amir of the community, but as ناظر الوقف of this facility. So this is a volunteer position. That he spends all his time working for us. So therefore, if he says, do not use this chair here, because there's 2 or 3 musallin going to take space, but use that chair there, we have to follow that. Now, having said that, when you read about ahkam fiqhiyya of ناظر الوقف, in the same time, he is asked to be reasonable, not dictator, and also he is asked to do what's best for the community, not as what's best. And that's the most difficult part, brothers and sisters, is to take away the personal part. If I don't like this brother because of his color or because of his I cannot use that. I have to treat each one of you as ناظر الوقف equally. You are all my brothers. And some of them stay in my face and say things that make me angry. But I have still to justify why am I saying this, and so Allah Ta'ala, inshallah, I will get the reward from Allah Ta'ala. Now, if you want to change that as a community, you can. You can say, well, we want to have 2 elections, one for ناظر الوقف and one for leader of the community. Or you can come and say, well, why don't we combine these 2 positions? Let's change the bylaws and the constitution and make them one role and have the community vote on it. And that would be different. But as this time, I'm going to summarize it, inshallah ta'ala, that the leader of the masjid is ناظر الوقف. But we owe to obey him as long as he doesn't abuse his power. And we ask from him to be gentle, nice, tolerant for all of us. So inshallah ta'ala, all of us will get the reward. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه يا فوز المستغفرين. Brother says that tomorrow there is Ustad Adnan from 3 to 5 in this masjid, inshallah ta'ala. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم الطف فينا حيثما الأقدار دارت، ويسر لنا الخير إذا ما النفس احتارت، وأنر بالإيمان دربنا أينما الأقدام سارت، واجدد أزرنا إذا ما القوة منا خارت، وأمنا من الفزع إذا السماء مارت، وأعطنا كتابنا بأيماننا إذا الصحف طارت، يا من بنورك أشرقت الأرض والكواكب سارت. اللهم اجعلنا من أهل النفوس الطاهرة والقلوب الشاكرة والوجوه المستبشرة، وارزقنا طيب المقام وحسن الختام. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأفضل الصلاة وتم التسليم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. وأقم الصلاة إن الصلاة تنهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي، والله يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون.